Welcome, everybody. We're going to start in a couple minutes. Get those questions in anytime in the question box in the toolbar, I think it's called, for GoToWebinar. If some of you see my mouth moving and can't hear me, there may be an audio portion of the toolbar as well. Make sure it's on the audio you are, whether you're dialing in or computer audio, and then look at the speakers. If you have, like me, if you have a headset and you have speakers and all these things. I've done them on the wrong one. I've also spoken into the wrong microphone so no one could hear me. So also check your volume, make sure you're not muted. I only tell you all these things because they're all mistakes I have made. So, and I think this is a big deal. How are we doing on time? It's 11:28. We're going to start in 3 minutes. We'll give you a 1 minute of loading grace time, and then we're going to go. Get those questions in anytime you have them. I'm seeing most of the people who signed up are here already because I know this is a big deal for my Michigan friends. So that's good. In advance, I'm gonna ask you for some feedback after this webinar. I'm trying a different style of webinar slides. So if you like this better than my normal boring ones, these are just differently maybe boring. So just let me know. Payroll and things are not astronaut stuff, so it's not as exciting. We got 2 minutes and we're gonna start. I wish I could make it play background music until we're waiting. Some of my daughter's piano work or something. Okay, about 30 seconds. We're gonna go. Again, for all of you who just got here, we're gonna start in a few seconds, but if you've got questions, I can't promise answers, but I can promise to look into them. I'll give you the best answers I have, but put them in those question box and don't wait till the end because I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of questions, and if you have a question, someone else has the same question. So you're doing them a favor. I won't embarrass you and call you out by name or anything like that, and I think your questions are all gonna be good anyway, so. I can see the people that are here, and the ones that I know would only ask good questions. So feel free to put those in there anytime. All right, it's 11:31. We're going to go. All right, welcome everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Mike Ritzema. I'm the president of Superior Trucking Payroll Service, and our mission is to help trucking families. This is how we do it. We try and share what we know about things. Again, you can see the thing. If you got questions, drop them in the question bar. A little bit of housekeeping. Your lines have been muted for the duration of the webinar. If you have any questions, put them in the question box. You can slide the GoToWebinar window closed by hitting the arrow, or little orange arrow. But if you click the black X, it's going to kick you out of here. So don't do that until we're done. Here's a disclaimer for you all. We're not attorneys. This is presented. Don't sue me over this. That's what that's saying. I'm giving you the best of what I got. This webinar also is not about the politics of it. We're going to talk about Republicans and Democrats, but this isn't about this side is right and that side is wrong. This side is great at everything all the time, and this side is the worst at everything ever. We all have opinions. Nobody cares. So we're going to focus on what we're going to do, how we got here, what we got to do, how we're going to do it. You know, that's the important thing here. There are plenty of places to hear people complain about politics all over social media. I'm sure you can find one. And this information is as of yesterday, and I looked at it again this morning an hour ago, and I didn't see anything new yet. So it's going to change, but this is where we are right now. So here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how did we get here? What's the history of this thing? Where are we right this second? Where are we going to end up? Which are 3 different places. How we got here, where we are, and where we're going to end up. What should we do? And questions and answers. I expect many questions on this. All right, here's how we got here. Back in 2018, there was going to be something on the general election in November because they had enough signatures to add a law, basically what the law is right now. And so it was really a Democratic sided thing. It's a labor sided thing to add earned sick time, right? That's not, again, it's not a political opinion. It's just what it is. So the Republicans controlled the House and the Senate and the governor at the time. So what they did was they did a thing called adopt and amend, because they either had to adopt the law or they had to put it on the ballot and then let the people vote. So what they did was they said, well, we're going to adopt it. So they adopted the law, and then after the election, they amended it and significantly cut it. They really gutted it pretty hard. You can say the Democrats shouldn't have put the law out that way. You can say the Republicans shouldn't have adopted and amended. Save that for the political shows. But that was what happened in 2018. Well, now after 2018, we had a Democratic legislature, Democratic governor, Democratic attorney general, and they went and helped the people fight it to say these laws were the way that it has happened was unconstitutional. We also have a Democratic-led Supreme Court in Michigan. Also, they agreed with them in July of this past year. So they said, okay, you got to go back to the original law as is. And the effective date is this coming Friday. Why they picked a Friday, you can find out from somebody else. I have no idea. Should have been a Monday. Anyway, they said, you're going to do this law exactly as it is. You can't do anything else. So that means there's going to be a lot of crazy stuff going on. But that's a very short summary of how we got here, as impartially as I can say it. I don't think there's any heroes here. Here's where we are now. Until something changes, the original ESTA law is the law. The ESTA's Earned Sick Time Act, for those who don't remember. The lawmakers are considering changes, and we'll talk about those, but there's nothing done yet. Like, they're waiting until the exact last possible second. They're shopping for Christmas presents at 9 p.m. on Christmas Eve when all the stores are almost closed. Businesses should prepare for this, absolutely. You know, it's crazy. We got to get ready for this thing that's probably going to change somehow. I don't like that either. Then there's a copy of the law. That's the link to it to read it in full. I thought I put that on there as a source document for this thing. Let's start with who's covered under ESTA. The way the law stands right now, who is covered is anybody who works in Michigan, with the only exception being the federal government, nice, huh? And I think railroad workers who have their own, basically work for the federal government in a different way. So if you have one employee who works 1 hour a week, you got to cover them. They're in it. Full-time, part-time, temporary, all of them, all get covered. Independent contractors are not covered because they're not employees. I'm going to talk more about that later. But for now, just 1099s that are supposed to be 1099s are not covered. So that's how, that's good news at least. I don't know how you'd pay. That'd be like you guys, clients of ours, having to pay us sick time for doing your payroll. That'd be crazy. All right. This is the big one here. This is the main screen we're going to talk about. This is what is right now. So I think it's going to change a little. We'll see. So I've got a few different things here. How is time earned? Every hour they work, every 30 hours they work, they get 1 hour of sick time. That's the crux. That's easy math, but that's what it is. We'll go into the problems with that in a little bit. How the time can be used. I'm not giving you every single part of this law, and I'm not giving you every single possibility. I'm covering the 80-20 of it, the 80% of it. I'm not covering the things like tipped wages, which is part of it too, because it doesn't affect trucking. So I'm trying to just get to the stuff that matters. How can the time be used? Personal injury, caring for a family member, issues related to domestic violence, public health emergencies, uh, things like that, things that you'd normally have to miss work for. One of the things that I want to talk about now about it is a tricky part of it is you really can't ask for proof, because almost every source of proof, proving somebody was sick, proving something about domestic violence, the public health emergencies are going to be apparent. But all the rest of them violate HIPAA. You can't ask for it. You just got to take them at their word. There is a clause for if they take so many days, you can require some things, but even the things you can require really don't tell you anything. They really don't. They're just going to say, yes, I saw a doctor, but you don't even know who the doctor was or what they were for because they're a specialist. Now you got a HIPAA thing. So they can be used for all those things. And yeah, that's kind of a bummer about your lack of ability to verify it. And they can use up to 72 hours a year for large businesses. Well, they can use up to 72 hours a year for small businesses and for large businesses. But for small businesses, you only have to pay for 40 of them. You can give them the other 32 unpaid. For large businesses, if they've accrued the time, you got to give 72 hours of sick leave a year. One important thing especially for the large businesses, is that they can only use 72 hours a year, but they can accrue an unlimited amount and carry it forward to the next year. But they can only use 72 in the year as long as they're employed for you. They don't get to walk out. I'm going to spoil this right now. If they went for 10 straight years and never used a sick hour, they can't hit you for 720 hours walking out the door. So they can't do that unless it's in your employee handbook that they can. You're not required to give them 720 hours out the door. That's probably a better way to say it. So small businesses, again, less than 10 employees, and they define 10 employees as, did you pay more than 10 people in at least 20 weeks of the year? And if you did, then you're a large business. And if not, you're a small business. You don't have to pay as much, but you still got to let them take the time. Again, there's arguments into all this that small businesses get hurt more by this because one person missing more out of a small business affects people more than people missing out of a large business. It is what it is. So that's ESTA in a nutshell right now. I could go on for longer, but we get into the details, and I think we're going to lose a lot of people because I think there's not a lot of yeah, it just gets into the weeds. All right, so because we knew this law was coming since July, and we sat on it until after the election, of course, because why do anything? See, that's bipartisan political nonsense. There have been the Michigan House, which is now controlled by the Republicans, and the Michigan Senate, which is controlled by the Democrats, have both put up bills to change this law to take a little bit of the bite out of it, or a lot of the bite out of it, depending on which one you're talking to. The one I want to focus on is Senate Bill 15. The reason that I'm focusing on that one instead of the House bill is that, quite honestly, the Democrats have the leverage here. The side of not reducing it as much, that's where the leverage is, because if everybody sits on their hands and does nothing, we're going to have the law as it's written now. And both sides are talking about making the law less of a burden. So the Senate bill, I think, is the one that's going to be closer to where we end up. And these are the big changes in the Senate bill. That small business threshold goes from 10 employees to 25 employees. That's going to cut a significant number of people out of who have to pay for 72 hours. Allows front loading sick time, which you can already do. So I think they're just changing how you do it. It's not going to be significant, I don't think. Sets a carry-out cap of 2 years. Again, the employee, that's a minimum. The employer can always do more. You can always, if you have 10 employees, or if you have 8 employees or 1 employee, and you want to give them 72 hours of sick time a year, you can pay for it. There's no preventing that. This is just the minimum requirements. Reduces the statute of limitations down to a year, which is nice, because you shouldn't need 3 years to know you were denied sick time, I guess. Eliminate civil lawsuits. I like that. Everything's got to go through the labor department and state labor board instead of having civil complaints, which hopefully would save any of the defendants a lot of legal fees, and we'd get to an answer. And it adjusts the civil fines, lowers those. Again, I put the link there for a summary of the bill that's out there. You're all going to get the slides. So just know that you don't have to copy anything down or snap. You can screenshot whatever you want, but don't sweat it. You're going to get this anyway. But and there's some other stuff in it too. But again, this is the stuff that matters. So that's the main thing of it. It's gonna make things a little bit easier. The Republican version, by the way, it's House Bill, is it 4001 or something like that? Changes how you accrue the time as well. So there may, instead of 1 every 30, maybe it's 1 every 35. 1 hour of sick time for every 35 hours worked, something like that. So we'll see where we end up. Yeah, it's so uncertain right now, which is frustrating for me as someone who's trying to present information to my clients and my trucking friends about how the heck are we going to deal with this when we don't even know for sure what the law is going to be. The employers must plan for the current law, but maintain aware that's probably pretty apparent. The couple of things that have happened is I was reading in the last few days that they made an agreement on some of the stuff that doesn't affect us, like tipped wages and things like that, but they haven't gotten into this yet. Governor Whitmer wants to delay the implementation of this law till July 1st so that we can get this done. Yeah, I would think since we only get about 36 hours to figure this all out, it would be nice of them to do this, to put it out a little longer. My concern is if they push it out to July 1st, on June 30, we're going to have this webinar again, and I don't have to change any slides because they won't have done anything. Just get it done, people, right? So we've got that going on right now. I think the House and Senate are going to get together. The Michigan House and Michigan Senate are going to get together and come up with something. And I think if they do, the governor will probably sign it, and we can get this done. My hope is that when they make this law and they get it done, they also give us time to implement these things, because this is a huge bunch of changes for us here in trucking. You know, we don't do timekeeping, right? I'll get to that in a minute, but like we don't do timekeeping for drivers. So like we got to set this all up. And it's not just trucking, it's mostly trucking, but it's also piece rate workers. It's also commission salespeople that are not considered to be exempt employees. By the way, your exempt employees are just assumed at 40 hours every week. So if you don't pay overtime, if you say they're exempt from overtime, they just get 40 hours every week. I think that'll probably be a question that I've got. I see some questions in there, which is awesome. Um, here's you got to evaluate your workforce. Do I have W-2 employees who will qualify? If you have W-2 employees, they will qualify. Are you correctly classifying workers? I think this is going to be a potentially big deal because we still, in Michigan, and again, I'm not taking shots, but we still have a Democratic Attorney General and a Democratic Governor for at least the next year and almost 2 years. So 1099 versus W-2 is going to continue to be a thing in Michigan. And if you have a driver who should be W-2 and you're paying them 1099 and the state gets involved, whether the driver complains or the state your number just comes up and the state comes and visits you, not only are you going to have all kinds of tax problems already with late 941s, failure to file, failure to pay, state problems with failure to file, failure to pay, possibly fraud, but now you're also going to have sick time that's owed to the driver as well. It's just one more thing that's going to add on there. So if a driver gets redetermined to be W-2 by the state, you're going to owe them back sick time, probably plus penalties and all that fun stuff. So it's just a reminder to be really careful with that. We're coming out with a test of should your driver be 1099 or W-2. Hope to have it out by the end of the week. I'll probably put a link to it with the slides. So you can, if you're not sure, take the test. And if you're still not sure, of course, you can always talk to us about it. Again, we're not attorneys, but we have a pretty good idea. So now what should we do? We're going to have to adjust how we pay people or how we track people's pay. It just for the, I mean, again, I'm thinking of the drivers. Like, I'm going to assume that you keep track of hours for your hourly people in a way that makes sense, and you can use those to accrue sick time. I'm going to assume that your salaried people are really salaried, which is another thing too you want to make sure about. It's a separate webinar, but it's really important. Your exempt people should really be exempt. Generally speaking, dispatchers are not considered to be exempt by the federal standard. Um, Independent judgment with regards to matters of significance is the magic phrase that gets them in trouble, because they say that booking loads and entering contracts with brokers or shippers or whoever is a regular part of the job. So just be mindful of that. Do your thing, but just want to point that out. You want to update your employee handbooks to reflect this policy. If you're a client of ours and you don't have an employee handbook, you need to talk to us. We're going to help you with that. And it's going to cost you about nothing. So let us know about that. But you want to have that in there. One of the rules in this is that you don't have to pay it out when they quit. So you want to make sure that your employee handbook doesn't say that you pay out the money if they quit. You can also combine this time with your vacation time. They can use it, if you let them, they can use it for vacation time. So you want to make sure that, again, if you're paying out vacation when they leave, this would be considered vacation time and it would keep accruing. So you want to make sure that you say it's only up to this much, or it's only this thing, or we don't pay it, or whatever. Just be really, really clear about that. The guidelines for requesting and approving time off. Requesting, they can request it pretty much right when their shift starts. You know, we're honestly, as an employer, you're kind of hosed on that one. I don't know if that will change in the new law or not, but you know, something comes up that's last minute, your kid starts throwing up, they can take the day off, or they can take, right? So that's kind of where we are. And you're really going to want to train your dispatchers and managers on this. I mean, yeah, it's going to suck, but they can't be telling people they can't have days off for sick time when they say their kid's sick. And I'll tell you, quite honestly, if somebody says they're sick, you got to kind of take them at face value, especially for one day. Unless you can demonstrate a pattern or demonstrate they aren't sick, and that's really hard in all kinds of HIPAA problems. You're going to lose 10 times out of 9.9 out of 10, you're going to lose. And then every time you lose, it's going to cost you more than you gained in the win. Of course, monitor legislative updates. That's a fancy way of saying watch the news. It's going to change, and it will. So I don't know how it's going to change. I have predictions on how it's going to change. I think we're going to be pretty close to that Senate bill because, again, the Democrats have leverage here and the Republicans just don't. I'm not, again, rightly or wrongly, they had all the leverage when they did adopt and amend because they had the House and the Senate and the governor and the AG, I think, at that time too. I'm not 100% sure about that. But they had all the leverage then. They don't have it now. So that's just the way it goes. They will probably have it again someday, and they will probably lose it again someday. So just you keep up on this. We're going to do our very best to keep you all informed because this is a big deal. We want to keep you as informed as we can of any news, and we'll probably send you emails. We'll probably put things up on our website because we want to spread the news. What you should do, as far as, here's my suggestion, because I'm sure this is going to be a question. How the heck do we keep track of this stuff? We don't have driver hours for drivers. What do we do? I haven't looked at the questions yet, but we're going to get to those in a minute. What I would do, and this was an idea from one of my clients, was if they're all on ELDs, I would use their on-duty time and their driving time. Add those up. That's their work hours. I would, if you're a client of ours, I would send those to us as part of your payroll. If you send us an Excel sheet, add a column for that, for work hours worked. If they're drivers, we know that if they don't have hourly rates already, then we'll just track the hours, but there'll be no extra wage for it. If you have hourly drivers, you'll probably already have their hours, so we're good. And then also make sure you're sending us hours used. A lot of our clients send us pretty raw data as far as pay this driver, $1,200, take $100 advance. Okay, well, now you're gonna have to tell us also, or you should tell us, pay this driver $1,200, $100 advance. They worked 54 hours and they used 4 sick hours that we got to deal with. Okay, and then we'll add and adjust the accruals and things like that. We'll make a report for you too. We can show you balances every week. We'll talk to you all individually about how you want to do it for the people that are clients of ours. And if you're not a client of ours, you can call us. We'll give you suggestions. But Unless you're a client of ours, we really can't do it for you. So, but yeah, that is to me, that is the best practice that I've heard, because you're not going to make drivers. We have time clock software, and it's fine. It tracks time, right? But I can't imagine, short of you calling your driver every day and reminding them to punch in or reminding them to punch out, that it's ever going to work, because they already got to do ELDs, they already do all these other things, and this doesn't even get them paid. It just tracks sick time. So then it'd be very easy for one of them to say, well, you make me punch in, but I don't get paid for it. And I forgot to punch in one day and you didn't remind me because you saw that I only had 30 hours on my PTO accrual that week, but I worked 60 hours on my ELD, so you should have known. And yeah, you might win, but you got to get an attorney, all that crap. So my advice is, for the drivers, on duty time plus driving is your hours for accruals, and then you know what they have for hours worked or for hours used that week, and then you let us know. So with that, I think I am up to questions. Yes. Um, Again, I wish I had more and better information for you. I promise you I do. I wish I did. We have a bunch of questions, which is good. All right. Let me see. The first one is, do you have to take PTO out for time off, or ask the employee if they want to use it? I would set a policy for that. It's up to you. You could tell them that they have to opt in or opt out. You can tell them they're always going to use it. And when I say use it, we're talking about the paid time. The person who asked me has more than 10 employees. I'm not going to name names unless you want to be named. But I'm not naming names. But so you ask them, hey, do you want to use this as PTO time? Now, if they tell you, you can always choose not to. Well, wait, no, let me say this differently. So let's make up an example. If driver takes today off because their kid is sick, I would force them to use it, because otherwise their bank's still going to show a full amount of hours. So if they didn't use it this week, they'd use it next week, and they still have all their hours available to them. I'd make them use it. So that's the answer for that. Do we make the next question from the same person? Do we make them use PTO? So I should read all the questions, I guess, because yeah, exactly. Do we make them use the PTO so they don't get extra time off? Right. Again, you can always grant extra time off that's not paid beyond those hours. Again, a lot of our clients actually are good to their people, and if they had a medical emergency that was going to keep them out for a month, it's not like they'd fire them. They'd pay them the 72 hours, and then if they give them extra time because they've been there for a while and you've just chosen to give them extra time, they'd use that up. It's not like they're looking to fire them. And you know, if somebody has something horrible, you know that. How do we pull forward the PTO time? I think you're talking about the starting time. Like, I think you're talking about, like, what do we do on Friday? One of the options you have is that you can front load the time, which would be 72 hours, or think of it as 9 days if you use 8-hour days per year. Well, they can accrue, so you can front load and give them 9 days today. You get 9 days of PTO, 72 hours of PTO right now. Well, or more than that if your company was more generous with vacation time, you can do that instead. So I would bring that forward, and I'd get everybody else up to at least 72 hours. I'd actually give everybody, figure out their vacation time if you do a vacation right now, and I'd pull it up to today, or backdate it to the first of the year and start pulling it up from there, if that's easier. If you're a company that gives out all the vacation time on January 1st, start at January 1st, look at the hours since then, and build it up. So that would be how I would do that. It's kind of tricky. It's kind of case by case, depending on how you do it. If your anniversary date, it's a little trickier, but I would make sure everybody had at least 72 hours in their bank right now that had been working for you for at least a year. I think the preload way is the way to go for compliance. Here's the issue with preload as of right now, and please change this. You can preload 72 hours a year, but you still got to go back at the end of the year, because they can accrue more than 72 hours. So, and drivers work more than 40 hours, or at least I would hope so, especially the full-time drivers. So they can, it'd be really easy for them to accrue, instead of 72 hours, accruing 90 or 100 hours in a year. That's not a outlier at all. So if they do, you got to roll forward the hours they didn't use, plus the hours they didn't use anyway, get to roll forward as available to the next year, but they can still only use 72 in the 1 year. So if you had a driver, let's make up a goofy example. The driver works 3,000 hours this year starting Friday, happens to be their anniversary date, everything, no other issues, right? So they earned 100 hours, didn't use one of them. Picture of health, never took a vacation. They'd get that 100 hours, plus if you preloaded them, they'd have 72 more. So they'd have 172 hours available, but you can only use 72 in the year. So it's not like they can burn the 172 in the year, but you need to keep track of that, because what if that driver in the future only works 20 hours a week? Because they only accrue the hours on hours worked. So if they were sick enough, it could only work 20 hours a week due to what, there's things like having to take your kids to physical therapy for something, right? Might get you out of days. So if they work less, they can burn off those extra time because they've already earned it. So it's going to be complicated. I'm hoping they make it easier. I'm not optimistic, but I'm still hopeful. Let's see here. Are we getting copies of the presentation? Yes, you are. We always do that, but it's always a question we get, and it's always a good question, because I wouldn't want to have to write all this stuff down either. Leased drivers from leasing companies, are they covered? Yes and no. And it's good. It's a good yes and no for you. They are covered by the leasing company. The leasing company is the one who W-2s them. So the leasing company is the one that has to pay them for the sick time, not you. They may have an agreement with you that you have to pay them back for it or something, but you don't have to do that because they're the ones paying them. You're probably 1099ing if the company was not incorporated. You'd be 1099ing the leasing company, and the leasing company would W-2 the driver. If the leasing company doesn't W-2 the driver, you shouldn't use them anyway. Whole other discussion, but that's a really, really bad deal for you, because you're gonna get all the penalty and none of the benefit. How do we pull forward the PTO time? I think we talked about that. Oh wait, I went backwards. That's why we already talked about it. Do you accumulate their hours per week, per month, per year? You accumulate them per week, every week. So like what we're gonna do for this client is they're gonna get us the beginning balances, and they're gonna get us hours every week, and they're gonna get us hours used every week, and we're gonna give them a report every week of the changes for everybody and what their balance is. Once they get to 9 days, do you still need to try to keep the time? Yes, because they can earn unlimited amounts. Whatever, 24 hours times 7 days times 365 and a quarter days, divide that by 30. That's the max they can earn. I don't know how somebody would work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but that's the max. There's no maximum. Should there be a maximum? Yeah, probably. I don't get to pick that. What if they work more than that? Yeah, it's infinite. As many hours as there are in the year is how many hours they can earn divided by 30. What about sovereign citizens? Oh, yeah, sovereign citizens. For those of you who do not know, sovereign citizens are people who believe that basically U.S. law doesn't apply to them. There's a whole thing. You can go look them up. They're basically tax protesters. The first thing I would do with a sovereign citizen is I would still pay them W-2. And if they said that was not allowed, I would invite them to work somewhere else. Absolutely, 100% of the time. I don't care how good of a driver they are. They are a pain in your backside, and they are not worth it. I would invite them to work somewhere else. And if they try to file for unemployment, you explain to them, I thought you were a sovereign citizen and not a citizen of the state of Michigan, therefore not subject to the benefits of unemployment. And then all of a sudden they'll be citizens again. Crazy how that works. I would let them go. They are a lawsuit waiting to happen every single time. They are an attorney's dream client, because they're going to tell you, you can't take taxes out of me because I'm a sovereign citizen. UCC 1207. 14th Amendment wasn't properly ratified. The Fourth Amendment, tax is a violation of the Fourth and Fifth Amendment for self-incrimination and illegal search, all this other nonsense. It's all garbage. It's all lies. Nobody wants to pay for the fire department until there's a fire. That's what these guys are. So I would never, ever, ever hire one. That's what I would do with them. That said, I would accrue the time. If they're 1099, they're 1099. If they're W-2, they're W-2. But the best advice, fire them. Make them go away, because you're just asking for trouble. There's no winning in it. There's just no winning. Sorry if I got fired up about that, but that sovereign citizen stuff makes me crazy. If we give vacation time, can the 9 days be part of that, or is it in addition to vacation days? Yes, the 9 days can be, you can combine all of the paid time off. PTO is paid time off, and that's what you call it. It's not personal time off, it's paid time off. That's what you call it every single time. You can combine it, and of course, then you'd front load it. They can use the days for this instead. Most of the time, this isn't really going to be an issue, because they're going to run out the days if they have them. And if they, I don't think a lot of your people are just pretending to be sick to try and get paid. We're an office. Obviously, you guys have trucks on the road. If one of my people wants a day, they just take a day. Like, we manage that. Or if they're sick, they're just sick. It obviously impacts us differently. We can cover each other's workload much easier than having to put someone else in a truck. Absolutely not the same. I completely agree. But yeah, this isn't, I don't think this is going to be the huge thing. All right, now we got a question. This is a long one, so okay. Oh, sorry. Should we use on-duty driving time for all drivers other than hourly? We have flat rate minimums and mileage. We assumed if we didn't pay OT, then they would be considered exempt and just front load the 72. Mileage would be the only one where would maybe help. I love your idea. However, they said very specifically only the salaried people. They didn't say only people that are exempt from overtime. They said only the salaried people are the ones who you can assume 40 hours on and just give them the 72. So what I would do is I would do the on-duty and driving times and add those together to make your hours, just to make sure. You can front load the 72, but you've got to audit it at the end of the year, which means you've got to keep that data in the meantime, because a year from now, you may not have the hours from last week. So I would still do that. Again, the hourly people, you're fine. It's the flat rate guys, the minimums, all that kind of stuff. The mileage people, you're going to have to do it for those. Again, pending a change from the government where they say you can just assume 40 hours on people if you agree ahead of time or something, which seems reasonable. You should be able to assume 40 hours. And I'll tell you why I think assuming 40 hours isn't as costly to the driver. This isn't like trying to get over for the employer, because we're going to have a question, I imagine, or if not, I bet you might wonder this question: how do we figure out the hourly rate for a driver? Driver gets paid by the mile. What do we do? And I'm running over. I apologize, but this is a big deal. If you got to go, we'll get you copies, but I encourage you to stick around because I think this is important. Right now, the way that you do it is you use the hours from the previous week, not the last 52 weeks, which would make a whole lot of sense for drivers, but you use just the last week. So we need the hours from the last week, and then the pay from the last week. Divide that out. That's their hourly rate, and that's the hours we have to pay them for using sick time. Blech. I would rather use 52 weeks. I think it's more fair, but I don't think anybody's going to try and rig this to try and get more pay, higher hourly rate, and then take sick time. I don't think it's going to work that way. And also, for some of our clients who send their drivers across country, and maybe they don't turn in their load until they finish the round trip, so they almost get paid every other week anyway. You're also going to book all the hours, so your hourly rate is still going to be about the same. If they did 40 hours a week and just made us take the average weekly wage divided by 40 for the hourly rate, then the drivers would get a higher hourly rate, but not accrue as much, not accrue as many hours. They just get probably the 72 every year versus getting 100 at a lower rate. So, but they get the 100, but they can only use 72. So I guess it kind of works for you, because you'd pay out only on the lower amount on the 72. Let's see. When you say employers can use ESTA time as vacation, how would you word that in your handbook so you don't end up paying it out? In other words, are we okay to state in our handbook that employees can use ESTA time as vacation time? I think you're safe to do that. We're going to talk to we have an HR firm that we work with, and we're going to get a better answer on that once this thing settles this law, because they're not going to know yet. But what I would do, absent that, I would say Yes, you can, we allow you to use your ESTA time as vacation time, but it's still subject to the ESTA limits or whatever vacation time we give you, whatever is greater. And we don't pay it out, or just say something like, we limit our payouts to this schedule, you know, say they have 80 hours a week or 80 hours a year of vacation, normally is what you're doing now. Well, we limit it to that schedule minus what you've used in the last year. So if they used 32 hours for sick time and then they quit, you will give you the other 48. So you just be complete in your explanation. Reach out to me about the specifics. We'll talk. I think, again, I think some of this stuff might get settled in the compromise bill that's probably coming. I'm still waiting for, I expect, like right now, because I can't see the internet screen, I can't see my web browsers, that they probably are announcing it while I'm doing this webinar. Let's see here. Is it better to front load or do accrual? Front load is easier. However, you still have to do the accrual. So, because you got to check at the end of the year. Because if a driver you go into next year and the driver wants to use all the hours and they hadn't earned them yet, you could have issues. So I think, I hope and pray that they tell you front loading could be and no audit behind. Front loading for people that don't get paid by the hour, you can front load the 72 hours and be done. And you don't have to worry about the audit. But you just base the hourly rate on what, their hours divided by 40 each week. So that, yeah, that's what I would do. I would front load it. Now, again, how much is it really going to matter? I don't know for this client, because this is a client of ours, but I think they normally just they don't send us hours, and they don't send us if they use vacation or not. They send us gross pay. So I don't know if you guys have a vacation policy or not already. If you have a vacation policy, I would probably front load it, because people got their, they've already earned that vacation time from the past, perhaps. Absent that, if you don't have a vacation time policy, I would probably plan on accruing it for now, if you can. And then we'll just have to change your import so that we have a column for hours worked, which would be again, absent a better idea, on duty plus driving, and then hours used. A couple other things about the law that I didn't put in the presentation here, but are a thing. Everybody accrues starting on the hire date. Their first hour work starts accruing time. You don't have to let them use the time until they've been there for at least 90 days. So someone that works for a month doesn't get sick time yet, unless you choose to give it to them. You can always choose to be more generous. Another thing is, if an employee leaves and they come back within 6 months, they get their accrual time back. So if they left with a balance and they come back and you rehire them, they keep that balance. If they're gone more than 6 months, then they start over, which, again, you can choose to give it to them, but you don't have to. I am hoping that we are going to have, oh wait, we got one more question here. Good, or a couple more questions. Excellent. I must have missed some. Okay. Sorry about that. I got to scroll back. Oh, good. There's a ton more questions. I knew it. I knew it. Okay, here we go. With the FLSA motor carrier exemption, meaning they are exempt from overtime, would it be the same as a salary employee to base it on a 40-hour week? No. The exempt from overtime is different than, that's the time and a half part. And so you still have to pay them at least minimum wage. It's not the same exemption as the administrative exemption. Those are the people they're talking about. I think you could make a case. I think an attorney could make a case that you would qualify. I think that the other attorney would make the case that you don't, and it would be a problem. I would like them to change the rule to be exactly what you're saying, that anybody who's not tracked hours gets 40 hours a week, whether they work an hour or 80. That would be great. How do you calculate an hourly rate for a driver paid by the mile? Total pay divided by total hours the week before they use it. That's the rule right now. I would like it to be over 52 weeks average instead, because that makes more sense and the driver can know what to expect. However, they did not think of trucking when they wrote this law, shockingly. I know you're all amazed and are dropping your mouse or phone or something right now, because that's always how it works unless it's a trucking law. So we have to count all PT hours, but only pay 72 in the year if they have extra at the bank for next year. Yes, and that bank keeps rolling forward. So it's the front loading 72 hours every year works in that year as long as you're doing it for everybody, everybody, and you're treating them all the same. So like somebody who works, part-time in the office, works 2 days a week, you got to give them 72 hours then too, because I would not pick and choose who you do this with, because people can earn more time. And like the other part too is they can use the 72 even if they're not full-time anymore. So somebody switches from full-time to part-time, they got to keep their whole bank, which is where the accrual part comes in, and why you can't just do 2 hours a year, but then make that part-time person hourly, because they would have earned hours in the previous years if they were full-time before. Okay. You've already answered my question, started stating only salary people. So what if our drivers have a guaranteed salary but can't earn more than that amount? So you have a minimum. Minimum, by the way, decent recruiting technique, because these drivers got to be able to know what minimum they're going to take home. A minimum is not the same as a salary. I could pay my employees a salary, but they're not exempt from overtime, which is a different thing. I know that drivers are exempt from overtime for those who are in interstate commerce, or take up a load that went to another state, touch a load, whatever. But that's a different exemption. And again, I wouldn't want to get hung up on that. I think you're still going to need to track it. Again, like the other one, man, it would be great if that's the compromise they come to, because I don't know who would be against it. It would just make sense, right? When I run for president, ha ha ha, then we'll make that a law. I'm never running for president. Our pay period runs Thursday to Wednesday. So would we use the hours from last pay period to start their totals for today? No, you get to start with tomorrow. Actually, you can start with Friday if you want. The law accrues starting Friday. So again, absent any changes, I expect there's going to be changes, but absent any changes, you don't have to start accruing until Friday. Friday morning, you got to start accruing. Okay. I apologize, 1,000 questions. No, you're awesome. Forget that. 1,000 questions are great. 1,000 is low because this is such a goofy law. But also, if we have a driver whose home terminal is in Florida, but they travel and drive to Michigan and work in Michigan for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. Oh, okay, let me see. I think that, let me reread that. I apologize, 1,000 questions. But also, if we have a driver whose home terminal is in Florida, but they drive to Michigan and work in Michigan for 2, 3 weeks at a time. This is for any Michigan employee. If their home terminal, if you're saying that they live in Florida, I think you're okay. They're kind of vague about that because again, they didn't write this law for drivers. I will tell you, if you had an employee, if you were a Florida trucking company and you had a driver that was in Michigan, they're subject to the law. So I would think the reverse would be true. Hopefully you're already giving them enough sick time that you're over this and they wouldn't get it anyway. But this working for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, are we talking 2 or 3 weeks at a time once a month? Are we talking 2 or 3 weeks at a time once a year? I think that would become, if a significant portion of their time is in Michigan and they're spending nights in Michigan, like I'm just going to assume that, say they start in Orlando and then they come up here for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, bounce between Detroit and Grand Rapids and Ludington or whatever, right? Flint, whatever. And they're bouncing around here for 2 or 3 weeks at a time and they're spending the nights here. You might have an issue. I would at least be paying them vacation time. They'd be somebody I'd at least make sure I front loaded so I was covered. You're probably taking vacation anyway. I don't know. This isn't a client of ours that I know of, so it might not be. But if you're paying a vacation, just call it PTO. Okay. Even though, and 1,000 questions, totally fine. Even though we have mileage and flat rated and minimum paid drivers, we give them an hourly rate at time of hire. Can we use that hourly rate, or do we have to give them the calc you just gave? Yes, you have to use the calc I just gave, or the hourly rate, whichever is hot. You have to give them at least the calculation I just gave as the law is written right now. It's not a thing to minimum wage. It's not a thing to, I don't remember, this is a client of ours. I don't remember if your hourly rate is relatively close to what their actual hourly rate would be. Right now, the way the law is written, according to the LEO, which is the website for Michigan that talks about it, you've got to use the prior week's pay to determine hours. Let's see here. Our attorney just told us to change our verbiage to PTO. Yes, for your employee handbook, for anything that talks about vacation or time off or any of that, call it PTO. Don't call it vacation. Holidays are different. You do what you do with holidays, but PTO, always what you call it. Absolutely, because that way there's no confusion about vacation versus PTO. Oh, I thought I had vacation and PTO, something like that. Are there, oh, good, more questions. This is outstanding. Is there, if they work a different number of hours each day, how do you know how many hours to pay them? Or is it the weekly average? That is an excellent question. What I would do is I would use an average hours a day, or again, when they wrote the law, they assumed there was a schedule that, like you came in at 8 o'clock and you left at 5 o'clock. I know you all work past 5 because you're in trucking, but presumptively that's your schedule, right? Hour lunch, 8-hour workday. So it would be 8 hours if you took the day off. Salaried people, 8 hours if you take the day off. But for drivers, right, they might work 4 days a week and work 12 hours a day. They might work 5 days a week and work 12 hours a day. What I would do is if they had a schedule, if you have a schedule for that driver or a typical route that they run, and I think this client has a lot of typical routes, then I would pay them for what they would have, I would have paid them, I would have make them use the hours they would have worked, or the hours that the person they had to substitute for them worked, or something like that. I would have a methodology and I would put it in my handbook so that everybody knows this is how we're going to do it. I would not assume 8 hours unless that is an 8-hour shift. I would assume more than that. On the employer side, it actually uses up the hours a little more quickly, but you're paying them out more. But yeah, that's what I would do, because they're also accruing at those rates, right? They're accruing the hours at those rates, so they should use them at those rates. So yeah, weekly average. Again, you can use a methodology like that. Something like weekly average divided by 5. I would put it in my handbook and say that because the hours vary all the time. But you want to make sure they use them, if they're going to use them. Okay, the other person from the Florida thing got back to me. Yes, they are under Florida EIN, numerous divisions in different states, but they help out at the Michigan terminal periodically. Okay, when you say help, again, you can get me more information on this. You can put another question in with it. But if they help out at a Michigan terminal periodically, meaning they're up here doing multiple jobs, multiple runs over 2 and 3 weeks, I'd be accruing those. Or again, because you have multiple terminals, different divisions in different states, I'm assuming you're big enough that you pay vacation. I would just incorporate it into that because they're only going to accrue for the Michigan time. So if they do Michigan work that 2 to 3 weeks, say they do it 4 times a year, and say they work 60 hours a week for 3 weeks, it's 180 hours, 4 times a year, 720 hours. They get an hour for every 30. It's what? So 720 divided by 30 is 24. So they get 24 hours of paid time off. You're giving them that anyway, especially people that are coming up from Florida to help you out. I imagine your company is generous enough to give that to them anyway. But yeah, if not, let me know. But I would say they would absolutely have the case that they accrue because Michigan, they start instantly. So, and especially if they're just bouncing around terminals in Michigan and they don't even leave the state, yeah, I think I would accrue them. Absolutely. Did I catch up? Is that all the questions? Good for us. Okay. Again, I apologize for going long, but I think this was important. And I think there's going to be a lot more coming. I might do another webinar if they make a big change. I might just send you all a link to a video that I did or a link to an article that we're going to do. If you have questions in the meantime, my email's right on the screen. There's our website with our blog that you'll find it there. Just search for ESTA. ESTA. There's our YouTube channel. We're going to put this video there. We're going to put other videos that we make about ESTA there. Again, you can search there for it. We got a TikTok too if you want to go find us. We're happy to do these webinars for you for free. We're always happy to do them. We want to help trucking families. If you feel like you owe me, go subscribe to our YouTube channel and we'll call it even. That's all we need. But with that, and I'll give you the last chance for questions. I don't see any. If any of you have questions later, reach out to me. We'll talk about plans and we'll get this thing going. I hope to have news for you very soon about an update that is slightly less insane. But with that, I wish you all luck and thank you all for being here. Have an awesome day.